topic is promoting the reparatory justice change we are organising to bring about. Promoting the reparatory justice change that we are organising to bring about. And that is a theme that we have chosen for this year's 1st of August, which we have renamed Mosiah, African Emancipation Day, Reparations March, that takes place in the UK, in London, where we march from Brixton, which some of you may have heard of. It's historically a site of African settlement in the UK and resistance. That's what it's known for. However, it has also become subject to gentrification. So I know that we're seeing this trend all over, where areas where we have historically been, you find that the gentrification takes place. Yes. Another population moves in and moves out, and all the problems that go with that. So we march from Brixton to the Houses of Parliament, and then we also we have a delegation that hands in a petition to 10 Downing Street. Now, we've been talking over the 2 days about revolution and reform. And in the UK, we have these same conversations about, well, why do we march, yeah? I mean, I'm not a fan of marching at all. I haven't done that many marches. But you'd often hear our people in the UK, African people, say, well, we've been marching for 50 years, and we're tired, and we're not getting anything out of it. So why am I advocating this march? Well, the march is not just a march. That's the first thing to say. Right. It's also important for you to understand a bit more about the context. In the UK, we don't have the same history of liberation and, say, armed struggle that you've had in nationalist movements here in the USA. Our people have resisted differently. And so your context determines what it is that you can convince and support and enable the masses to do in order to take their own freedom. Context is very, very important. And even though many people in the UK who have come from outside, like from Africa or the Caribbean or anywhere else in the African diaspora, those are the people that bring that history of liberation struggle in all different ways. And they do influence what we are doing. But as strategists and as organisers, we have to find a way that we as vanguardists can also get the masses on board. Because ultimately, it's the people who are going to have to bring about the change.
That's right.
And if we cannot get the people to even take basic steps to transform their situation, then what are we doing? That's right. So that is why the strategies that we have been developing are really umbrella strategies that house so many other things. Just like in NCOBRA, we know the basis, that strong basis of NCOBRA, but you've created a broad coalition where many different interest groups with even different methodologies can feel that they can come around this organising process. And that, I think, is also about being strategic. So in the UK, the African Emancipation Day Reparations March, which takes place on the 1st of Mosiah, August, is part of what we utilise as what we call social movement. It's a tactic that we use in terms of social movement building. And we have 5 main kind of approaches that we are taking globally, I would say, in the UK. The first being the march, which galvanizes a lot of people, predominantly African people, who might even not self-define as African, because that's part of the damage. They might see themselves as Black, British, or anything else, but the march is for them too. And so we talk about this notion of an African heritage community, because even if people don't call themselves as African, they will not deny that they have African heritage and ancestry. So we have the march. We have something called the Stop the Manganese campaign, which I'll say a bit more about. We have the movement to really establish a structure, a mechanism that is about exposing the UK government to the rest of the world. Again, a tactical approach. It's not because we believe that they are going to hold themselves to account, but it's saying, you know, we are utilizing, if you like, the so-called norms and laws that we had to challenge them, because it's important that we challenge the establishment. And that is really part of another strategy, which is about building the international will and power to establish people's international tribunals. And we have a conceptualization of something called the Ubuntu Gotla. A lot of what we do in the UK is very, and as I spoke a little bit about the movement, it's very African-centered. So a lot of the terminologies that we use, because we realize that we're also trying to move people into becoming who we are. Yeah, not who we were, but who we are to be. And so we also include with the English lots of African notions, terminologies too. So Ubuntu Gotla is really a global court, a world court that we don't yet have. But in our endeavours to engage with different reparations movements, and yesterday I spoke about the ISMAR, the International Social Movement for African Reparations, and the PRIM, the People's Reparations International Movement, which is everyone else that's not African, but are also struggling for reparatory justice. And ISMAR is part of the PRIM. We're not separate to the rest of those people, even though that's how a lot of our struggles have evolved. And so it's through using those mechanisms and engaging with certain indigenous peoples of this land, Aborigines in Australia, who are developing sovereignty initiatives. We have there's something called the Sovereign Union of Australia, which is pre-colonial, because they were colonized by the British too. Yes. Aboriginal nations who have reclaimed their sovereignties and established their statehood. So we're working with them, and we're sharing strategies and tactics because we have the same common oppressor, okay? And then finally, a lot has been said about the damage that we are facing, and even what will the solutions look like. And so we advocate a notion of what we call community repairs, because we do not buy into this notion that it's individuals that are going to get some kind of paycheck. Sure. We are saying, and many of us, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some people who don't agree with me totally, but I'm talking about the dominance and the thinking that is guiding a lot of these actions. How we think is that the repair process has to be, even if there was compensation, it's to a community that is in the process of repairing themselves. Otherwise, what you get are just those people who are even killing each other, our own people, who feel like, well, I'm supposed to get mine. But hold on a minute. Your claim, our claim, is an intergenerational claim, legally. That's right. It's not just based on us. Right. Yeah. So imagine if you yourself now, those of you who are parents, grandparents, you have something, you're leaving it to your children, your descendants. Now imagine your children don't want to know nothing about you in your lifetime, disrespect you, defame you, but they wait till you pass and say, well, I want what's mine. That is not ethical, and that is not African. And part of the reclamation of the mind and the mental liberation is about us redeveloping that community, family, strength of relationships. That notion of I am your keeper. I am. And that is something we have to learn to do again. So we promote something called the AHC, the African Heritage Community for National Self-Determination. And that is a model of nation building that recognizes that we are not seeking to cede any part of the UK in terms of territory. It's not our home. Our territorial homeland is Africa. Even though many of us will not go back to Africa, our people in the UK, they still have a right to belong to Africa. A right to belong. And in this, the decade of people of African descent, we are promoting the right to Africa as a people's right. We have a right to Africa. That's a right to belong, but it's also a right to benefit from the resources of Africa wherever we are.
That's right.
So it's a specific right that we have been developing, because even the decade program as it stands, it's silent on African people in Africa. And it assumes that we can have our rights respected and honoured, and our continent is just out of the picture. We are not going to get no recognition, no proper justice, and we're not going to effectively be able to develop if this is not done in sync with our power base, which is our motherland. So that is why we talk about an African heritage community for national self-determination, and part of what we're struggling for is our recognition of our right to develop autonomous institutions. And so there are, for instance, in the UK, what they call indigenous white populations, like we have a people called the Cornish people, and they have a certain amount of devolution of power, central government, and so forth. And we are organising ourselves in terms of a block of people that come under the jurisdiction and governance of, if you like, a government, yeah? Which we call the Global African People's Parliament. Because as you know, in terms of nation building, you have to establish your constituencies, you have to have mechanisms of accountability where people can say, yes, this is our body that governs us. And that is also part of the process that we have to go through. So I say that to say a little bit more about the march. Well, the march, as I said, is not just a march, and it's not just a one-day activity, although there's lots of popular misconceptions around that. The march has specific aims. There are 5, and I'll share them with you. The first is to draw attention to African people's global determination to not let the British state and other perpetrators get away with the crimes of the Ma'angamizi. I explained yesterday what the term meant, the African holocaust and continuum of chattel colonial and modern day so-called neo-colonial forms of enslavement and everything else, genocide, blah, 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 blah. Second is to hand in the Stop the Ma'angamizi. We charge genocide, which was inspired by the 1951 We Charge Genocide petition that was developed by the Civil Rights Congress of the USA at the time. And also what we're saying is that in this petition, it's part of a wider Stop the Ma'angamizi campaign that includes as its goals the need to establish a British all-party at the governmental level, what's called a Commission of Inquiry for Truth and Reparatory Justice. Because Britain has done so much wrong to many African and indigenous peoples around the world. And the structure that we're trying to mobilize the power to bring about, because that's what it's going to take, is global in terms of the British impact globally. It's not just about what they did to us in the Caribbean or what they did to us in Africa. It's about the British Empire as it has dominated African peoples and those that self-define as black, because they're not necessarily one and the same thing, as I also spoke about yesterday. And the petition itself raises consciousness about the fact that all the attacks upon us, this continuum of harm that we've been speaking about, in both individual and collective instances, amount to genocide and ecocide in what we call Ma'angamizi continuity, necessitating reparations. So with that, what we're doing is we're making ourselves, from a legal standpoint, which is really the contribution that I bring to this movement, modern day victims. So it's not that our claim is, for our purposes, based on our ancestors. This is not reparations for chattel slavery. We are the current day victims, but what we do is we trace back the injury, the harm, the wrongdoing, the brutality, the crimes, to our ancestors. So you can see that systematization, yeah? And today it's amounting to genocide in international law. And also ecocide, because we're not just, you know, people-centered. We have to recognize the damage that's being done to our environment and our connection to land and environment and ecosystems and everything else, because that's what's also killing us. Third, to increase awareness of the necessity to stop the Ma'angamizi and its current manifestations, which is key. So everything that we've been talking about, and we kind of capture it very visually in this postcard, which is one of our educational tools. The Stop the Malgamese, We Charge Genocide, Ecocide postcard. You can't see it very well, okay, but it includes 12 manifestations of the genocide, ecocide. Yeah, sure. Denial of African Mother Earth rights. So in Bolivia and other countries in so-called South America or Avialana, they've recognized this notion of Mother Earth rights. It's not just about human rights and individual rights and even people's rights. It's the rights of the earth as well. The rights of the earth not to be constantly mined and drilled and attacked and so forth. Police brutality, school-to-prison pipeline, menticide, nutricide, reproductive and sexual violence, miseducation, the extractive industries which are causing so much havoc in our home countries, austerity measures, gentrification, land grabs, Afrophobia, which is anti-African prejudice and discrimination, a specific form of anti-black racism, unemployment, malemployment, forced sterilization, racial violence, the expanding industrial prison, pharmaceutical, everything, medical, academic industry, all these industrial complexes, racist immigration policies that are separating us from one another, denial of our sovereign and dismemberment of our sovereign peoplehood. I'm not black British just because I was born in the UK and my parents were born in British colonies at the time. That does not make me black British. So that quest for peoplehood and nationhood continues. And many of us are struggling to realize that and re-establish that again. A denial of our national, in terms of nations, self-determination. Again, the past folks do not define us. Bioweapons of mass destruction, including HIV/AIDS, Ebola, and all the other bioweapons that they are unleashing on our people as part of Agenda 21 and the depopulation agenda. And that is what's going on. And then debt bondage, which is holding many African and Caribbean nations in so-called debt. Well, we don't owe them, they owe us. The international monetary system is how they actually have our people subjugated. A privatization of resources. So our governments are not funding public services and health services and education. A lot of it is going into servicing these illegitimate debts. So we talk about also a notion of debt repudiation because we don't recognize that there's a debt. So the fourth aim is to demonstrate African people's strength, capacity, and determination to speak to and challenge establishment power with our growing grassroots power to effect and secure reparatory justice on our own terms. We do not use the language of pay, and we do not say receive reparations. We are not passive, we are active. We have to reassert our African agency, and that is part of the notion of what's called prefigurative politics. That we have to be the change that we wish to see. And that is also a mindset. That's right. Yeah, that is a mindset that moves our people from sitting back, you haven't paid us our reparations. Right. How are we going to get our people from that to taking what it is that we are? That's how it's going to come. Right. And we're under no illusions. Right. Because we are in the mother of the beast. Britain colonized 3/4 of the world. So don't get it twisted about this austere Britishness. Because they're tricky. And they have that country, they have some of the smartest Caucasians in the world. Because you cannot, as a small group of people, colonize 3/4 of planet Earth. And do that. They're not gods at the end of the day. They're not superior to us. For those of us who live there, who've been born there, we've been raised amongst some of the toughest of them. Yeah? The worst of them, but they're so slick with it, they'll smile with you, they'll give you a tea, and in it is arsenic. Enjoying that cup of tea and feeling, oh, it's great that I'm allowed to just sit at the table with my So that is what we're dealing with. And the final aim of the march is to showcase African people's grassroots initiatives for reparations, which is really key. And so that's why this year we've chosen that theme of profiling or promoting the reparatory justice change. Because let's be clear, true reparatory justice, holistic reparatory justice, is not Band-Aid on something. It is system change. We need a new economic system, new legal system, all of that. And we cannot just use their laws, which legitimize and legalize conquest and dispossession to free them. The brother mentioned the Audre Lorde quote. So we as critical lawyers, of which I am, meaning that we use the law in a critical way as a tool of resistance, but we also know it has been a tool of oppression. But we use it to stretch the boundaries of what is possible in terms of trying to get our people to realize that the power is in our hands. So ultimately, the movement is very premised on self-repair. That is its core. And the most important part, the repairs that we make amongst ourselves. Not the finger pointing at the oppressor. Because that still is important, but it maintains us focusing somewhere else when we need to be putting that attention back on ourselves. But we have a lot of people who say they're doing self-repairs and they let the oppressor off the hook. So we have to be careful because we can't coexist in a system of injustice. So we're very clear it has to be revolutionary change. But we also recognize where our people are at. There you go. And we have to grow with the people. We have to move with the people. We have to transform even our own ideas in accordance with what the people are prepared to do. And we're not ready yet. We're not ready yet. Even in terms of sitting down and negotiating at the international table, we are not ready. Because we have not formed ourselves into an international front, a united front as African people. We are not ready. And as long as we continue to separate into Africans in America, and Africans in Europe, and Africans in the Caribbean, and Africans in Africa, they are just laughing at us. They know we're not ready. But we need time to get our people ready. And that includes all forms of action, including armed struggle, because that is part of how we've always sustained any gains that we've had. And the march is also we see it as, we call it an action learning process. We learn about the system through trying to challenge it. So there'll be many who believe that, oh well, the laws say this, and Durban said that, and so you can argue with them till you're blue in the face. What we do is we take people through the process. There you go. So I was part of a legal action in 2003 where we attempted to sue the head of state, who happens to be Queen Elizabeth II, the world's largest landowner in terms of legalized title to land on planet Earth. She's not just the Queen of England, the head of the British Commonwealth. And people were saying after Durban, yeah, but slavery is a crime against humanity. So we had to go through that process to try and trigger that legal, conventional legal process where you hold heads of state to account. It's not going to work. Because the Attorney General, who brings prosecutions for crimes against humanity, is appointed by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And there's Masonic rights around it, okay? So they are not getting ready to hold any of their own people to account. But in terms of trying to create the public groundswell, and that power you need for people to stop investing in a system that does not serve their needs is what we are cultivating. We are cultivating that where people realize, well, hold on a minute, why are we propping it up? Because it's us that maintain the length of our servitude. It's us. Because so many of us invest in a system that is not working. We think that we can repair it. It cannot be repaired because it's broken. It doesn't even work for them. attempting to do. But the march, in my conclusion now, is partnered with the Stop the Manganese We Child Genocide campaign. And that campaign is the more side of it that is dealing with how we build on all the resistance that's going on across the African diaspora and the African world, including Africa. All those struggles that are about land reclamation in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, in Namibia, in South Africa, all that's not reported on in mainstream media. Our people are fighting on the ground, and they're fighting the governments that many of us think are theirs. They are fighting them. So we're linking with them because that is where our power base is. And we work on the theory of change, a methodology that unless this becomes a global struggle of our people, taking steps to actually stop them from taking out those minerals. When I mentioned 101 companies that dominate our key resources in Africa, if those mines were shut down at source, this world could not function. The US empire could not go around bombing the world. And part of our role in these places is to challenge these governments, not to be part of them and think that we belong and think that we are citizens while they go around leashing their reign of terror and terrorism on our people. And Britain is just as guilty as the government that you have here. So that is what we do. The march, though, also has an educational process. So we have something called the GRIOs. Grassroots Reparations Education and Outreach Teams. They're like the Jehovah's Witnesses. They go out on the street every week, like the Jehovah's Witnesses do, and they talk to people. They have the petitions. They talk to people about reparations while they're shopping, while they're in the hair salon. People who would not even want to take the information. And we deal with all their, well, we ain't going to do, we deal with all of them. And they are the frontline advocates. They are the ones who actually speak to the people and get them to see how reparations is relevant to all their campaigns, all their struggles, but also getting them to see that unless we tackle things systematically and systemically, we are not going to get sustained change. Now, finally, the march has organizing blocks, which are ways of sustaining the activism beyond the march itself, yeah? And we have the Mokwale Konso, revered ancestors, because it's not all the ancestors.
That's right.
It's our revered ancestors. Because some of our ancestors,
Not all of them.
and we have some of those ancestors walking amongst us today, sowing confusion in our community. That's right. Even within our movement. The purpose is to divide and to reinstate.
Yes.
The Pamoja community block. The Ujamaa, which is the global African family, and we have representatives from movements all around the world. Last year we had Baba Jahara, who came and represented NCOBRA on the march. We have the Fiancra repatriation block, because a lot of our people, we have a lot of Rasta in the UK, because there's a significant Jamaican population, and of course Rastas are not just Jamaican, but they've influenced a lot of so-called Caribbean culture. And so repatriation is very strong. And we know that in terms of reparatory justice, that was our first goal, to return home.
That's right. That's right.
So repatriation is number one for many of our people. We want a right to return to our homeland, and a right to belong, and to receive the protection of our homeland like a Jew does in terms of the state of Israel. That's what our people want. And again, I'm not going to get into the politics of that because that's another issue. We have the Imani interfaith bloc. Our faith communities are very important.
Yes.
Because a lot of our people don't just self-identify in terms of ethnicity or even culture. I know that there's culture in religion and spirituality, but their sense of a connection to a divine, universal being or intelligence is very central to their core identity. So we have the interfaith bloc, which encourages those people who are part of organized faith groups, who are challenging the role that their faith might have played in our people's Ma'angamizi, but are also liberation activists in terms of liberation theology. Because a lot of our abolitionists were inspired by a strong sense of our faith and our spirituality, and that is key. We have the Sankofa Suafo Students, Youth and Student Flock, which is very key to organising all year round. The Ujima Trade Unionist Bloc, because workers and those who are organising as part of labour unions are very, very vital in getting our people to see why it is we're suffering such poor working conditions today. That this is not new. The Kumba, the artist bloc, all those artists, and we work with a lot of rappers, hip-hoppers, spoken word artists who are not going to come and sit in a room like this, but they're able to reach the people that we cannot necessarily reach. Because what they do is put the ideas, everything into popular forms in terms of consciousness. So one of the songs that has been developed is a song called Ma'angamizi by a rapper we have in the UK called Akala, and he developed that song as a result of coming on a reparations course that I taught, and one of the exercises was go away and produce something creative that put some of the stuff I'm teaching on this course into a popular format. So that's where it comes from. And then we have the Ubuntu Non-African Allies bloc. This issue of the role of white folk and non-Africans is again one that comes up, and there's a lot of resistance to involving them. There's a lot of our people who that issue about, well, would you put somebody who's been raped in a room with their rapist? No. So there's an emotional reaction to having non-African allies. But we also recognise we are less than even 10% of the UK population. We're not going to get very far if we're not able to also influence the hearts and minds of them. And their young are very much following our young, and they're following our artists. So we can influence what they want to do, but their people are going to go out and change their people. That's not what we do. So that's really what the march is about. And just to say that, yeah, we send you solidarity and greetings. The march also takes place in different places in Africa and the Caribbean. We have solidarity initiatives. We've also had conversation reparations in solidarity with what we're doing. And what we encourage people to do, there's an international libation ceremony, Pan-African libation ceremony, that takes place on the 1st of August, Messiah, in Ghana. And we encourage people if they're in West Africa to support that. Because even if you were not colonized by Britain, Britain's in there somewhere. They're in there somewhere. So when we're working with the Hereros, we point out that the British knew about their genocide and they covered it up. We have a Herero community, a Nama community in the UK. So we work with them and say, can you do something on the 1st of August, but look at the British complicity. Because they are always in the mix somewhere. And that way they will begin to see that we are a people who are re-establishing our international legal personality, which is what makes us a people globally, beyond the borders of Euro-American imperialism. Okay? International legal personality. And we are asserting that for ourselves. And the UK, as small as we are, the Jamaicans have a saying, she's small, but she talawa. We're small, but we're talawa, meaning we're mighty, we're powerful, because our vision is global. It's not locked into the UK, because Britain's empire was global. And that is a power base that you have that you need to tap into more. Thank you.
Wow.